Kia ora koutou, welcome to our Smash Round the Kitchen Table event. As always, a huge thank you to our Smash sponsors, Dairy NZ, FMG, Balance, Pioneer and Rabobank. We value their support, and without it, our events wouldn't be possible. I'm Anne-Marie, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this event. As we move towards the end of summer, with thunderstorms, earthquakes, and tsunami alerts happening all around us, it's a good time to catch up for an on-farm season update with Ag 360 farm consultant Wade Bell and Waikato farmer Jamie Haultain. Now, Wade has been an independent farm consultant in the Waikato for the last 2 years. Before that, he was a Dairy NZ regional manager for 8 years, and he is a valued SMASH committee and trust member. After finishing a geography and environmental science degree at Auckland University, Jamie obtained a science internship with Dairy NZ and did his master's degree with Dairy NZ and Massey University. He was then a consulting officer for Dairy NZ in the South Auckland region, and after 8 years went contract milking on his parents' farm. He's in his 3rd season there now and plans to go 50-50 along with his wife and 4 children, Charlotte, who's 7, Henry, who's nearly 5, Harriet, who's 3, and Annabelle, who's nearly 1. Something you may not know about Jamie is that he spent the last 2 weeks of May 2019 chasing storms in the US before returning to milk the cows. Now, we might find out soon if he chased any storms yesterday that were in the Waikato. Wade and Jamie are happy to answer any questions you might have. So just write them in the comments section on Facebook or sign up to YouTube to do so. That's enough for me, I think. Wade and Jamie, over to you.
Cool, thanks Anne-Marie, and great introduction. And yeah, look, for me it's a pleasure to have a bit of an online chat with Jamie, known Jamie for a wee while, so this should be a bit of fun, and I'm really interested to know a little bit more about what he's up to and how he's sort of planning out the rest of the year. So Jamie, just probably quickly to start with, just so people can get a bit of a sense of where you are, the farm that you're on, a little bit of an insight into the farming operation that you've got there before we get into our topics. Can you just give us a bit of insight into the farm there?
Yep. So thanks, Wade, for the introduction. Yeah, we're located sort of between Horsham Downs and Gordonton, just north of Hamilton. And I'm on my parents' dairy farm here. They've had it for 34 years sort of thing. So yeah, we're 240 cows, 75 hectares effective, and it's a relatively flat farm with a few rolling hills in the middle. So we've got a variety of soil types, peat, sandy loams up to Hamilton clay, and typically we've sort of done about 100,000 solids every year and try to run a sort of system 2 farm here.
Yeah, cool. I guess one of the interesting characteristics or features or from your farming operations, you do manage to harvest a lot. That's a lot of production from a system 2. You manage to harvest a lot of feed from the platform. Just want to elaborate a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the farm does grow a lot of grass. It is a well-developed farm, and a lot of effort goes into making sure we have pastures that are performing, and we are also feeding those pastures well with fertilizer and a good dose of N. Challenge is that it tends to only be growing. Most of that feed's only growing for probably 8 months of the year, and we're short for another 4 months through the summer. But hopefully that sort of balances out a bit in the years to come. I do put a big focus onto growing and harvesting a lot of feed, and with that 5 to 6 hectares of maize, typically we get anywhere between 25 to 30 tonne per hectare of maize grown on farm. So they are decent crops. It does help a lot.
No, that's awesome. So I guess really interesting the history of your system, but you've made quite an interesting change, which we'll get into now, which is going down this track of once a day milking, and this is not just a part season gig. This was the whole season. Started the season. What was the key driver for that? What prompted you to go down that pathway? And obviously we want to get into some of the challenges, but why did you do it first?
Look, we were always going once a day around Christmas, and it was just a matter of when the cows sort of got to 1.6 or when we could see a dry spell coming, we'd try and jump onto once a day before the conditions really required it, and we'd try and hold that per cow production. And it's just every year you think, man, it's so good not having to worry about the farm in the afternoon. And my wife, coming from a non-dairy farm background and a sheep and beef background, she was used to seeing her dad at different times of the day. And so she was one of the big drivers for it. And she actually working for Dairy Connect at the time for Dairy NZ, passing people on to talk about other topics and so forth. She was fielding a lot of phone calls around once a day, and she said, we should really look at this. And so it put the pressure on me to have a serious look at it. And I ran the numbers, and I sort of thought, well, there's not a lot stopping us from actually achieving really good production and helping me cope through the winter and spring on my own. So 240 cows is actually quite a tough ask to do on your own all season. So you do need a bit of help in the spring. And once the calving was over, I always found that, through calving, it was actually a little bit easier than what it is when calving finishes, because you've got that extra set of hands in the morning and the afternoon, and so milking's a bit quicker and you can get other jobs done during the day. But when you're on your own, you tend to milk the cows, you feed the calves, you go out and set up for the afternoon, and before you know it, you're getting the cows in again, and you just can't actually achieve anything else on the farm for probably a 2-month period where you just flat tack actually milking cows. And I sort of thought, well, going forward, how am I meant to actually run this farm on my own as Dad steps further and further back? And I just couldn't see how we could do that other than going once a day or employing a full-time person right through the spring and into the summer. And when you start employing someone, you've got to provide them the accommodation, and there's a lot of cost to that. And so we did the numbers, and we sort of found that they sort of balanced out quite evenly. And so I chose to go the once a day route. I saw more benefits in that for the big picture and the longevity of me actually farming the farm.
Yeah, sweet. So what have you picked up in terms of the challenges? Like, we've heard heaps of theory around what you're going to experience from a production point of view. Financial, it's probably a bit early days yet, but you'll probably be starting to get a bit of a feel for that. Just in terms of how you feed and manage cows, what have you? And I don't know if we want to start with production, because that's perhaps a place to start. That's the most noticeable and it's real time. What if we because you went from a pretty impressive, let's make that a pretty impressive production system. Talk us through this.
Well, it wasn't pretty reading through the spring looking at my Fonterra app. I actually stopped looking at it, to be honest. So it was all rosy through July and August. I was quite happy with it, but all of a sudden we just started falling behind, and it was to be expected, but they didn't. I sort of budgeted on them getting a little bit more than we did. And so I certainly didn't reach my target that I was looking to, but I was very optimistic, and I set quite a stretch target, you could say. I wanted to challenge myself. And so typically we used to peak about 2.4, 2.45 solids, and that was largely on a grass diet. I could hold them at just on 2.4 on a grass-only diet once they sort of reached that peak. And I sort of thought, well, there's no reason to say we shouldn't be able to do two solids on a once-a-day system. And this year we sort of peaked about 1.9 for a short period there, but they held at 1.85 for quite a while. And I was quite happy with that. But it was, I guess, a lack of cow numbers. I would have liked to have had a few more cow numbers, but I couldn't really control that due to circumstances that we had in the winter. Look, we're getting ahead now, but certainly in the spring we were a long way behind. and I've learned a few lessons around, I guess, how to feed the cows. Twice a day cows are much different to once a day cows.
Yeah. Can you give us a couple of those insights, Jamie? Just briefly. What are those main points from a feeding?
Typically, the meal feeding system in the shed is only used during calving and to the point that we have a surplus, and it's then turned off and then started again when we actually run out of feed or start to fall short of feed. It's sort of November onwards, and we've always had that. You put kibbled maize in that silo through that period as for a twice a day cow. It's a good feed for them. I had kibbled maize because that's just what I did, and I never really put two thoughts into what feed I was feeding these cows as they were calving, and I actually found they were putting on weight incredibly quickly after calving, and they didn't actually really lose any weight.
Right. Yep.
So they were eating a similar amount of feed as they would on a twice a day cow, but just not producing nearly as much. So it was all going on their backs, and I tend to believe the kibbled maize wasn't helping. The cows maxed out at 22 litres a cow, so I couldn't get them any higher than that. And I've decided that the kibbled maize probably wasn't actually helping drive up anything around what's in that milk. So the milk test was sitting a little bit low for my liking, being on once a day. So next season, I'll change what goes into that silo and try and work out what the best feed is going to be for these cows. Given that they max out at 22 litres, how can we actually lift that solids percentage and actually get that little bit more from them, and possibly from a cheaper feed, because kibbled maize isn't cheap, but we can probably buy a cheaper feed and get a better response,
Yeah. So obviously, a much lower or little to no change in cow condition, and actually, which is quite different to a twice a day, and a change in that feed type. You might get away with something actually a lot cheaper and, perhaps a little bit less energy or something like kibbled maize.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
No, that's cool. I'll just shrink that back down. Just from the financial side, so that from memory, Jamie, is something like about a 14% down season to date.
Yes.
Yeah, somewhere there, but catching up on that now. Financially, how do you think that's all going to play out?
Yeah, look, I've just redone my budget. My initial target was to reach 96,000, which is actually the long-term farm average. So I was probably never going to get there, but I wouldn't have been far off had we had a good summer. I'm still looking at about 92,000, which on 100,000, that's only an 8% drop on my typical production. So yeah, sure, we're going to be 8% down on the solids and therefore income. Good payout this year. I don't really want to think about how much total we're down, but we've certainly saved cost. I purchased 2 less truckloads of feed through the spring than I typically would, and we're going to buy in probably another less 30 tonne of palm kernel, less than normal. I've cut out costs in terms of mating, which we'll probably come to shortly. I've pulled out the seeders, so there's a saving there. And just across the board, there's little bits and pieces that you can save on, like my labour and power and stuff. So it's sort of all adding up. But the biggest one I can see is we managed to drop our empty rate quite a bit. So we're going to save a bit of money in terms of grazing going forward. If that new empty rate is what we can run as a farm as a whole, it means that we don't need to have that many calves on grazing every season.
Yeah. So obviously, there's an obvious financial impact with the production side, and probably some gains there that have been made, but probably not the full effect of those yet. Might be another year or two away.
No, my goal would be to get back to the production that we were doing, sort of within 3 years, and have less animals at grazing, and doing what the farm's been doing previous years on once a day, as a once a day system, and having less cows at grazing. Like, to me, I'm just sort of thinking, well, why wouldn't you have a go at it? the apple's there. I've just got to try and get it. It's within my grasp.
Yep, cool. I've got a question that's come in that's quite relevant to what we're talking about as well. Somatic cell count, how's that been affected? Because that's often talked about with once a day.
It wasn't affected at all. Look, it's we typically in a year, the farm in the last 10 years, the farm sat anywhere between the average being anywhere between sort of 70,000 up to 110,000 for the season. And this year I'm sitting at 105,000 average so far. And it's absolutely no different. Every year the line sort of follows the same trend, but whether it's up or down by a few thousand, it hasn't been any different at all.
Yeah, and you haven't managed it any differently?
No.
It's normal practice for you.
Just completely normal. I had a really bad run of mastitis as they calved, which has nothing to do with once a day. So we had, I think it was 16% of the herd come in with mastitis, which has been a major blowout on the animal health costs. And I've sort of put that in the back pocket and said, well, it's actually got nothing to do with being once a day, considering they were actually coming in with it. So we've had plenty of meetings with the vets and the drug suppliers talking about how we can make sure that same thing doesn't happen this year.
Yeah. Yep. I've got a question that's come in about 6 week in calf rate, but we'll get to that a little bit later, so it hasn't been missed. Just finally on this, Jay, we could talk about this for bloody ages, to be quite honest. Really amazing sort of change to the system from what you were doing. If you were to pick out maybe 2 key lessons that you've picked out of this season from having your first go, and perhaps some changes that you were going to adopt for next year, what would they be?
It's probably the feed, but on 2 different levels. So I learned a lesson this spring where, twice a day cows, I found that you mess up your paddock selection or whatever, and they would just charge on through. They'd go hungry one night and they'd charge through, and you'd hardly see a drop in the vat. They'd just carry on, and it just sort of stripped off their back. With a once a day herd, I found that every time I cocked up, they dropped and they never came back. And I don't know if that's a typical thing for once a day. I don't know if other people experience it, but that's what I found this year. And so with those big growth rates through spring, I had to try and control the grass quality, and it was a real challenge, and I certainly didn't make it perfect, but we harvested a lot of silage, tried to keep on top of it, and you suddenly find yourself short. And I think through November I learned a lesson, or was it late October? There was a really big significant drop in our production through October, and that's just pure grass quality. So I've got to manage that a lot better, I believe, even though I put a lot of effort in with weekly farm walks and whatnot. It just I did learn a few lessons there. And again through the summer, where we've sort of we haven't had crops on the farm other than maize for quite a few years, and the maize has worked really well, putting weight back onto twice a day cows. But considering they're at a 5 at least right now, I've got the challenge of making sure they don't gain any more weight. I dried off 4 cows this morning that were just too fat. They were about a 6.5 and not producing much. And I just believe we've got too much maize in the system now for a once a day farm. So we're going to pull back on that maize and probably look at turnips for a feed that we can start feeding in December, January.
Yeah, cool. I might just quickly whip a couple of photos up, Jamie, so people can see. So just give me a second. Since you mentioned it now, I was going to put it up later, but you've sort of talked about it now. And I'm hoping that you're not sending me the ones that are just the fattest ones in the picture, mate.
No, that's a typical cow. It's probably a skinnier cow, to be honest.
Right. Okay. So what you're saying, I'll make that just a little bit bigger for viewers, but yeah. What you're saying in that cow condition, if she's representative or slightly even on the lighter end of what's representative of your herd, then it's absolutely
I've
not
got
a weight
challenges
thing.
ahead. Wait, absolute challenges ahead. So I'm trying to pull the maize back as a bulk feed and put something else in, but there's a big cost to that. So I'm putting meal through the shed. That's a high protein meal to try and keep that production going and pull back on the carbs, because those carbs are doing them no favors, and I will run into animal health issues next year if I don't get on top of it. And drying off the fattest ones is one of my approaches at the moment.
Yep. Okay, so we might move on. Like, I know we're going to keep things moving a little bit for viewers' sake, because we did want to touch on sort of where things are at now, because obviously the once a day is a bit of a game changer for how you're going to manage from where you are now through to the rest, to the end of the season. The targets might not change a lot, but how you get there probably will. So do you want to just sort of give us a little bit of an insight around some of these points that are up on screen, just where you're at the moment, and then we'll get into what's the plan to hit the 1 June targets?
Yeah, sure. So we were 227 cows and milk when I gave Wade these numbers last week, but I just dried off 4 this morning. They're still doing 1.2 solids, and I don't anticipate we'll see a drop in total solids in the day by drying off those 4, because they weren't doing a hell of a lot. Production, we are down 15% for the season now and up 10% for the month. And last year I'd already started drying heaps of cows off, so we'll just keep pulling that season percent down further and further. We got 30-40 mils in the last few days, so I'm a happy chappy with the rain. And so average cover is probably sitting the same, but we're looking green, and we've got grass shoots coming up everywhere. So I'm slowing the round down as quick as I can now, and I'll probably target about a 50-day round to 60-day round in the next 2 weeks to try and let that grass grow ahead of me, and so I can drop that maize. So I've pulled it back down to 5 kilos of maize now, as they get more and more grass silage with less cows. It's just 2 bales a day. And the palm kernel, actually, I've lifted again because our FEI actually dropped into A territory. So I thought, well, cool, I can lift that a bit more. So it's forever changing, and as we get more and more grass into the diet, I'm hoping that the cows will actually start stripping some weight, and I can pull the maize back.
Yeah. So going forward, and I'll move on to the next slide in a moment, but going forward, I guess the number that sort of jumps out at me on that page there is, let's say you've got an average cover of 1,500. I don't know what your target is for the 1st of June, but you might have anywhere from sort of 700, 800, 900 kilos of cover to build. Now, we've got 90 days, so really quick maths, one over the other, you're talking sort of a 10 kgs a day gain in your average cover. So you're going to win on the body condition score. Have you got enough feed in the mix to actually make all that work and take advantage of the cow condition?
I learned a lesson last year, possibly, that we dried off on the 27th of March last year with a cover of 1,300. And I tell you what, we had I think we were 2,200 by the 1st of June and 2,400 by calving. So when the rain comes, unless we get freezing cold May, when the rain comes, we typically grow in these sort of seasons. We would grow 80 a day through May. And we catch that up, especially the fact that I sit on a 100-day round through May. So the plan is to milk into May, but I would still keep the round as if they were dry cows. So they'll be under a lot of pressure in terms of their feed, but I also have no concerns about their body condition score, you see. So I can push them, and I'll push them as far as I can.
So your decision's driven by, certainly not by cow condition, because then you just put that to the side, and actually it's around just feed management only, which is quite different to most farmers that were probably assessing their position now, they'll be looking at both feed and cow condition. You're just looking at one.
Yeah. So I'll hold the empties as long as I can as well. But with the heifers coming home 1st of May, that'll put the pressure on the farm, and it'll just be a matter of, can I hold my 100-day round through May, well, 80 to 100-day round? Can I hold that and actually still get milk out of them, and without having to feed copious amounts of maize, because I'm not going to throw maize down their throats to only put weight on.
Yeah. No, 100%. Hopefully that's answered the question that someone posted a question just around the body condition score, milking on longer. I think you've kind of covered that in terms of your intention to milk on as far as you can, and just being mindful of hitting. So what? Just to finish on that, what is your target cover for 1 June? Where are you shooting for?
I used to be 2,200 for 1st of June and 2,400, or any between 22 and 24 through June and into calving. Hey, if you could increase it through June, that was a win. But if it's set at 22, well, then you can work with that. My first season, I carved down on 1,800 cover due to previous management, and it was a real challenge. And I've seen that you can actually carve down on 1,800. It takes a lot of feed and it takes a lot of blocking your ears from cows moaning, but that can be done. So on once a day, I believe probably 2,200 will be absolutely heaps to carve down on. So hey, if I'm only at 2,000 or 2,100 at 1st of June, I'm still going to be happy.
Yeah, so you might be a couple of hundred lower than say on your twice a day, but that works okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yep. No, that's fair. I think we've probably covered a fair number of points. Probably the one that hasn't been covered off here is just around the fat cow management. Like, you do have maize, you do have feeds that are going to put weight on cows that are already fat. What's your plan specifically with those? Because I guess you'll have some at-risk cows at the other end, which is not normal for most people on a twice a day.
Yeah, we were just tossing up the other day. Now that milk price has gone up again, it sort of it goes against all my my philosophy around farming. That chasing protein, it isn't worth it. You're better off to chase energy. And I've got this problem this year with these fat cows, and fingers crossed I don't have it again next year with different dieting. But I've got to try and keep these cows milking, and the best way of doing that is to actually offer them a better protein diet and pull the maize back. I'll probably keep buying a high octane, high protein feed through the silo, and keep that at a higher level, and try and pull that maize back, and just try and push the cows a bit more and see what they can do. And if we get some grass in their diet, like, that'll make a huge difference. I've never farmed on this farm through the autumn with grass, so I've never had to actually manage grass through March and April. So that'll be a bit of a new challenge. I'll continue to dry off the fat ones.
What's that?
I'll continue to dry off the fat ones as they sort of shut down, but I'm hoping with the grass coming back into the diet, I'm hoping that they pick back up. But that's the best thing.
Yeah, and so we'll give viewers a quick look at, and this just to give a feel for how it's looking on the farm. Maybe at the moment, or it might be a little bit greener in light of the last 48 hours, but hopefully people can see that. So what are we looking at there, just to get a bit of a sense?
That's my pre and post grazing there. So on the left you have post grazing that was only done maybe 2-3 days before I took the photo, and the cows were due to go into the paddock on the right the next day, I think it was, they went in there. So the paddock on the right actually looks reasonably green, but it's actually just all summer grass and weeds, to be honest. There's absolutely nothing in there. And needless to say, with the milking after that, they dropped a further, I think it was about half a litre a cow after that being in there. And every day they just seem to be dropping further and further, because they're going into paddocks that are I don't know. I would have said there's about 1,400 in that paddock.
Yeah.
It's pretty pitiful.
Yeah. Yep. Hopefully, the bit of rainfall and some growth might give you that protein source that you're desperately after.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to keep pushing on and just so that we can try and keep as close to time as possible. The last thing that we wanted to touch on was just around the repro results. Now, I'll put up your fertility focus report, which I think says there's a lot to be talked about around your fertility focus report. So I'll just give me a second here to bring that up. It's probably one of the more impressive fertility focus reports I've seen, or certainly in a long time. Hopefully, viewers, Jamie, you'll be able to tell me if you can see the top of that. Okay.
Yep. The numbers are a bit hard to see, but you can see the bulk of the numbers.
Maybe too big. So yeah, I'll take it to there. But there was a question a little bit earlier around 6-week in-calf rate. Have you noticed a change this year to previous years? I think we'll start there. And then I'll sort of scroll down so we can see the rest of the report. But have you noticed any noticeable difference, or is it again one of those things a bit early to tell?
No. So there was a difference. The number that you see up there isn't really any different to what the farm's done in the past. Sorry, I got a fly buzzing around me. So the biggest thing we noticed actually was on months a day. Every afternoon when I actually shifted the cows, they would run and skip like a bunch of calves, like they were incredibly energetic, and something I'd never witnessed before from the herd. So they were very playful and energetic, and I think that energy was just helping them to, in a way, display heats as well through the spring. And I had cows having really hard heats 2 weeks after calving. The quickest one was 9 days after calving, having a really hard heat. So it was just, I found that the heats were so much more obvious. You almost couldn't get it wrong. They were that strong. And the submission rate was just fantastic in terms of, putting cows up every day that were very obvious. I didn't have any short returns or any long returns at all through mating. It was, these are the cows on heat and there's no questions.
Yeah. So that's awesome. And someone's giving you some pretty impressive praise through the questions too, mate, about your 6-week in-calf rate. And look, this is obviously not just it's unlikely to be a one-off. In terms of intervention, this is a very quick mating period we're looking at here as well, which I should reference at the top. We're talking 8 weeks. These are incredible results. What do you do that's different to everybody else?
I can't take the glory of it. So I inherited this when I came onto the farm, and it's been that way for probably close to 10 years now. Dad used to have a herd of 260 cows with a lease block and whatnot, and financially it wasn't making him any more money, so he dropped it down to 245 cows, and he chose to drop off the tail end of calving, and essentially all that did was condense that calving, and the wind came from there, and we've been able to hold it there over the years, and in the past, it's actually had a lot of intervention, so typically 15 to 20% seeders, and so in a way it's been held up a bit by that, and I came in with once a day. I said, look, there's no need for nearly as many seeders as that, so we pulled out anything that hadn't cycled or hadn't visibly seen cycle 2 weeks out from mating, and said, we halved it, and we ended up with something like 6% of the herd we gave seeders, and that was all just to the heifers and R3s really. And next year I'm not going to give any, or maybe a handful, but there's just really no need for it when they're on once a day. If they can't have a cycle before calving, especially with that, they're only going to calve in the first 6 weeks, 7 weeks of calving. If they can't do it between the end of calving and start of mating, then there's actually something wrong. So a seeder isn't going to necessarily help.
Yeah, you're not starting from a really long sort of calving pattern in the first place. You've got a deep calving pattern. So intervention, like you say, is not going to actually add. You wouldn't think add a whole lot in this instance where you're trying to shorten that up again.
Yeah, that's right. And I think I did 8 weeks mating this year, and actually I pushed it a week longer than normal. Normally it would be 7 weeks, and I went, I'll go an extra week because I brought calving forward by a week, and I thought, well, I'm not actually changing the date of last cow calving, so I'll, I don't like anything calving in September sort of thing. The cow calving in September, I get annoyed. So I thought, well, September will be my cutoff. I'll go an extra week, and I actually didn't get anything in calf in that last week. So the last week of mating was just pointless. The bulls breaking posts and stuff I didn't really need them.
Yeah. Just caused you pain for no gain.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Happy to see them go.
Yeah. No, that's cool. So just to wrap this one up, so anything else that you do, like in terms of your submission rates are exceptionally good. Your heat detection, if I scroll down a little bit further, all these numbers read really well. Doesn't look like you do pre-mating heats.
I do, but it's not
not on the report. Okay. Yeah. So you just tail paint, do your pre-matings.
So I do pre-mating heats. I start I do 5 weeks out from mating, 6 weeks out from mating, and nice and early, and just keep changing colour as they cycle. And look, it's especially with once a day, it's pretty clear who had and hadn't cycled, and through actual mating, I'm afternoon mating, and I do believe that it does help doing afternoon mating. So I got a bit of stick from my neighbours for having the cows walk through the cow shed every afternoon, even though I was once a day milking in the morning. But hey, it worked for me. I didn't need to employ someone to help me draft cows. I just did it myself in the afternoon, and they were walking past the shed anyway. So I got it down to about a 15-minute window of sending the whole herd through and drafting them out. But going back to that, I sit in the paddock. I'd probably spend 20 minutes a day at least just watching the cows and picking who's coming on heat for tomorrow and who's on heat. And there were times there where a cow would sort of only just be standing for heat right on the time that the AB tech arrives, and I'd say, nah, I'll do you tomorrow. And sure enough, they get in calf. I don't know whether I could have put them up that day and they got in calf, but I like to make sure that they've actually had they're well into their heat.
Yeah. So really, we're going to get a combination of some pretty strong history with the herd, some good farm management practices. It's not necessarily this is not an impact of once a day by any stretch. This is a much longer term history of the herd and some good farm management that's actually achieved this result.
So typically I was always sitting about 13-14% empty, and it used to drive me nuts because I'm sort of thinking, well, I put up 95% 3 week submission rate, and then there was nothing wrong with the bulls, so why are these cows not holding? And I put it down to the fact that they were just producing so much milk. The energy's not there to conceive as well as once a day cows, and so I've dropped it from at 13-14% down to 9.5. I think my 6 week in calf. My fertility focus report is showing numbers with the different number of cows that I was working with on the scan. So I was really happy with that drop. I'd quite like to see it down at maybe 8.5%. But when you're talking 7 to 8 week mating, trying to get below that's actually really, really challenging. But you know, 1 or 2 cows can actually help that. So yeah, we'll see how we go next year. I might pull the bulls in a bit quicker. So at 24 days, I put the bulls in, and I actually found it really challenging on the last 2 days of AB, because I only had 1 or 2 cows to put up, and you're sort of looking around going, yeah, where are they all? And it's simply because so many were in calf that there was nothing left after week 3, you know. And so a bull would probably find them better than my own eye, I think, after 21 days. So I suspect I'll have the bulls in a couple of days earlier this coming mating.
Yeah, cool. Hey, look, I hate doing this, really cutting this off. We could spend like a whole session just on any one of these topics, but I am mindful of viewers and viewers' time. So we are going to have to wrap that up there, Jamie. I know Smash are chasing you a little bit to actually potentially have a field day on your farm, which I think would be fantastic, and would give an opportunity to explore some of these topics in a little bit more detail, and you'll have a few more runs on the board. Again, from me, thanks for having a chat. Some really neat and really interesting stuff that you're doing there, and I'd love to see a little bit more, but we have to wrap it up for today. So I'll hand back to Anne-Marie just to sort of close this off for today.
Thanks so much, Wade and Jamie. And yes, I totally agree. A field day on Jamie's farm is a must, I think. And of course, we do such a fantastic lunch and morning tea. I mean, come on. Thank you so much for such an informative round the kitchen table chat. We really appreciate your time and your sharing of knowledge and learnings. And thank you to everybody who asked questions as well. A huge thank you once again to our Smash sponsors, of course, Dairy NZ, FMG, Balance, Pioneer and Rabobank. We could not do what we do without their support. Make sure you follow our Facebook page for upcoming events and register at our website, smallerherds.co.nz. Now, our next field day is actually at Litchfield on March the 24th. We're all about celebrating dairy on that day. It's going to be fantastic. Over the Moon Dairy supplier Bram Ebling, Sue and Neil from Over the Moon with their amazing cheese, and the witty and wonderful Annabelle White, who's going to be showcasing Over the Moon cheese and some wonderful recipes. Plus, she's bringing her out-of-print cookbook, especially for Smash Field Day attendees to buy. You can't get this book anywhere except at the Smash Field Day. It's going to be a wonderful day celebrating dairy, so make sure you register on our website. Thanks again, Wade and Jamie. I'm Anne-Marie Case-Miller. See you next time. Ka kite anō.
Thanks.